Continuing with our discussion about different bailout techniques, we're going to switch over to the pistol now. Now, with regards to bailing out of the vehicle, we want to keep those three things in mind of security, mobility, and minimizing our silhouette. When we go to employ the pistol inside of a vehicle, it's a bit different than employing a carbine because we have a little bit more range of motion, but we also have a limited distance with regards to what we can expect with accuracy. One of the things that we see a lot of shooters getting caught up with is getting the gun into operation. A lot of guys are rolling concealed. A lot of guys are, having their guns in different places on their body with regards to holsters. And there's different techniques for getting the gun out and into the fight. We want to make sure that we're adopting the most efficient approach possible with regards to getting the pistol out and pulling security. Now, traditionally, guys are taught to draw and then engage the threat, then undo their seatbelt. What we're seeing with a lot of the new ways that guys are carrying their guns inside the waistband is maybe it might make more sense to remove the seatbelt, then get the gun out into operation. Regardless of those two methods, you need to find which one makes the most sense for you with regards to your vehicle and the type of equipment you use to carry your pistol. So if you can get the gun out into operation right away and still have your seatbelt on, make that happen. If you have to take your seatbelt off, be damn sure you can do that very quickly so that it removes any kind of doubt or inefficiency with getting that gun out into operation. So do whatever makes the most sense with getting that gun out and into the fight very quickly. Now, we don't want to remain static inside the vehicle. What tends to happen is we'll go through exercises where guys have a little bit more range of motion with a pistol, so they'll stay static when they engage targets. They'll shoot and they'll kind of just hang out before they proceed to exit the vehicle. We just did bailout techniques where we moved to the rear, where we had a dirty side on the front of the vehicle, and we moved to the rear. We're going to talk about doing bailout techniques where we have a dirty side on either flank and what we want to do with regards to getting to a safe place and looking for a new piece of terrain and seeing what we're going to do to continue the fight. If we have to employ a pistol off to our flanks to engage an immediate threat, most of our shots are going to be some kind of a modified version of a contact shot with just a single hand. So if I'm a right-handed shooter, more than likely if I have a contact off to my right-hand side or my passenger side, I'm going to go ahead and engage with just my strong side. So when you get the gun out into the fight and just press out right here and take a strong side shot. Now, I know we're tactical shooters. We all say we do strong side, support side work only, but the extreme limitation on taking this shot is your actual marksmanship ability. The other thing that we want to remember is that when we're in a real situation, our perception of distance might be extremely different than what is real. Another thing we want to consider is whether or not our target is moving and if we're tracking it. So if we have that immediate threat that we can engage with a degree of confidence relative to our actual marksmanship ability, not what we just tell dudes, on our social media pages, but what we can actually realistically expect true performance with, we want to take that shot. Otherwise, we might want to think about getting the gun out and ready for use and maybe consider getting mobile into a better position where we can actually take a shot. I talked about earlier about whether or not we want to go for our seatbelt to get it off of us first or go for the gun. Again, depending on your specific configuration with your holster, what kind of car you've got and where the seatbelt sets across your lap, that's going to determine what makes more sense for you. Also, if you're a left-handed shooter, if you're a right-handed shooter, that's going to determine if you go for that gun first or if you go for the seatbelt. And whatever makes the most sense that you can do with speed and efficiency, that's what you're going to want to actually rehearse. Now, a lot of guys are starting to carry with the appendix. They're starting to carry with guns that are, already flagging their legs or flagging some vital parts in their arteries in their pelvic area. If you roll that way, that's cool. Just be damn sure that you understand what your performance is like in a stressful situation, that you know what happens to your dexterity when you go for that gun and when you go to reach for that trigger. If it's when you mean to go for that trigger and it's not because you got jacked up and you got adrenaline going through your system and now you're possibly going to shoot yourself in a dangerous spot. So be very cognizant and realistic with your marksmanship abilities and your ability to draw the gun in a safe and efficient manner. Trying to outrun your headlights in training is probably not the best way to develop real and consistent speed. So in this particular situation, I've got contact off to the right. I'm a right-handed shooter. I'm going to go ahead and get the gun out into the fight with my strong side hand. I'm going to take a shot. I take the gun out. I'm able to shoot from this position. Now, if I'm a left-handed shooter and I have to get the gun out into the fight, more than likely I'm going to have to rotate my body over and I'll be able to get my support side hand somewhere onto the gun to help me get a sight picture. I'm not going to be able to present out to full arm extension, but I'm going to at least present the gun out enough to where I can pick up my sights. This is where you want to consider if it makes maybe more sense for you to take your seatbelt off so you can clear your holster, you can create more range of motion, or if you're more comfortable just leaving it on and go ahead and getting the gun out and ready into the fight. When I go to actually take my seatbelt off, There's a lot of crazy kind of techniques with this with regards to, like, you know, jump master style 5-step things where you grab, trace, press, release, throw. Like, we've been putting seatbelts on our entire life and we've been taking them off too. Just take off the seatbelt. If you are a left-handed shooter and your seatbelt has to come over and around your muzzle, just be smart about where that muzzle's pointed and where that seatbelt's going. But it's a simple, just take the seatbelt off and you're good to go. Once I've got this seatbelt off, and because I've got a pistol, I want to be very aware of where this muzzle is being pointed. I want to be damn sure that I have my finger pressed against the side of the frame if I am not actively engaging targets. So my finger is nowhere near the trigger. It's too easy inside of vehicles for guys to get kind of really sucked into the situation and get amped up, and they'll bring the gun down, they'll sweep their legs because they got the steering wheel right here, or they won't be paying attention, they'll start flagging it around, possibly at other people inside the vehicle or at, you know, no shoots or bystanders outside of the vehicle. I think that if you're going to look to use your pistol inside a vehicle in a defensive situation or in any kind of a close quarter manipulation, whether that's inside of a room, inside of a building, you need to have absolute control over this muzzle. And the way we do that is we go ahead and we bring it down into our workspace here in a compressed ready position, and we keep the gun in this position right here. And this allows us to have strong retention or take contact shots at immediate threats if we need to. Some of the new stuff that's coming out on the internet, because the internet's a little silly and we tend to think that new is better, is guys are trying to reinvent what ready techniques look like. Different ready techniques should not be the solution. The solution should be properly training our shooters to be safe marksmen that can also be quick on the gun and not relegating them down to a dumb level of safety. What we're starting to see is guys are being taught that this right here is a ready technique that they can use inside of a vehicle because it places the gun in a safe direction. Now, yes, by pushing the gun up against your face, like it's a Zach Morris telephone from Saved by the Bell, does put it in a safe direction. But it removes you from the fight. One of the most dangerous things it does is it takes away your ability to take an immediate contact shot in a close quarter situation. So I've already decided that I need to get my gun out into the fight. I'm possibly taking shots from inside of my vehicle at close quarter threats. The last thing I want to do is limit my ability to quickly get this gun out and into the fight. So when I go to open this door, if I am in a close quarter situation where I just had to shoot through glass, I had to employ my gun from inside my vehicle, the threats are that immediate, placing the gun up against my head takes me out of the fight. If I need to take a contact shot, I need to bring the gun down on level with wherever the threat is, and this adds time to an already stressful situation where I am at a disadvantage. If instead I had the gun right here in a normal compressed ready position, and I'm damn sure of where that muzzle is because I'm a competent tactical shooter, I can go ahead and take contact shots as necessary by simply just pivoting my torso towards the threat. Now, obviously, contact shooting is something we want to practice as well and be damn sure that we know what kind of, accuracy we can actually have with regards to the distance of the targets. But by pinning my gun up against my head, this completely takes me out of the fight. And in a very dangerous situation where fractions of seconds actually do matter a lot, we're adding time that's not working for us. When in reality, we should just be thinking about being more competent marksmen that know how to employ correct muzzle awareness. Another issue with this ready technique right here is it will completely block out your peripheral vision. So again, if I'm in a close quarter fight, I'm getting sucked into my immediate environment and I'm trying to process a lot of information. We talked about this earlier with regards to when an ambush does kick off, when a gunfight does kick off, it is incredibly ambiguous to tell what exactly is going on. If you see immediate threats, you engage them, but it takes a while for you to get that combat snapshot and truly read the terrain to see what's going on. If I have this gun pinned against my head like this, it is completely blocking my peripheral vision. I completely lose this side of what I can see, or if I'm a left-handed shooter, it completely blocks off this side. I might as well just close that eye so that I'm just completely taking myself out of the fight at that point because this gun is blocking it. And our peripheral vision is incredibly important in defensive scenarios. This is why we shoot with two eyes open, and this is why we do stuff to regain situational awareness the proper way, not just jerking our head around left and right. But this is another thing we want to consider is taking our vision out of the fight. So another failure point that we see is if we have the gun up against our head like this to relegate our level of safety down to this level, when I go to exit the vehicle, if I have immediate threats, I can't fight from this position, and this allows them to actually pin the gun against my head and disarm me. From this position, I can't really fight to retain control of my gun. Whereas if I had it in a more contact shooting position right here, in a compressed ready, or just in a position where I could actually orient it towards the threat, if I had an immediate threat come to engage me as I exited the vehicle, I can go ahead and just take those shots from right here with some degree of efficiency with regards to marksmanship and keep myself safe. So another issue we have with putting the gun up against our head like this is we see guys try to justify it with, checking the sectors in their vehicle or checking their teammates after you've had immediate contact. If you need to get your gun out and into the fight, you need to be thinking about security and how quickly you can get to a position where you can take effective shots. Just because you take shots inside the vehicle doesn't mean you need to start looking around to check on everyone's status. You can't help your buddy if you're still in the middle of the fight. So we want to think about getting more guns pointed towards the threat and making sure that the fight is actually over instead of staying static inside the vehicle. We saw how that can be a huge disadvantage when we were doing the carbine work inside the vehicle. So we don't want to stay static. We want to think about moving to a better position, a better fighting position. So what happens is guys are told that, this is a great position to have the gun so that when you whip your head around looking to check the status of your buddies after you just made contact, it keeps the gun in a safe direction. So you see guys whipping their heads around like this. Again, this is blocking my peripheral vision, so how much am I really seeing? And how much sense does it make for me to stay static in this position where I just received effective fire? This is the known data point where the enemy knows to shoot at me. And I'm going to stay here with no certainty that the fight is over. So instead of staying static here and trying to justify this technique for looking around at your buddies, you need to check on your buddies, but you need to make sure the fight's over first, and you don't want to stay static. So that's another failure point with this pistol technique right here up against your head. Another thing we need to consider is what actually happens in the real world when we're overwhelmed by adrenaline and we have stimulus overload and we're trying to compete with different cognitive processes and physical tasks too. I know a lot of really smart guys, very competent tactical shooters that have hiccups when they're met with a very aggressive situation that takes place very violently and very quickly. So dudes that will go to get out of their car, they'll forget to put it in park and now the car's still rolling. They'll have other issues where, they'll try to open their door and they're competing with their automatic lock system because parts of their wrist might be hitting it on and off of the lock. So there's all these external stress factors that influence our performance. And if we don't have a realistic expectation of what our abilities are, because we always do silly flat range drills that don't have any kind of relation to the real world, we're going to set ourselves up for failure with this ready position. And what's going to happen is if we trip getting out of the car, which is very easy to do, especially if you're in kit, if it's night, if you're on uneven terrain, if it's slippery, if it's raining, very easy to trip getting out of your car. We're going to have our gun up against our head in a position where if for the unlikely reason that we do ND, that round could go straight into our dome. So we're going to present arms and then suicide right here because, we didn't validate a technique rigorously against what happens in the real world. We just thought that, hey, this looks cool, this is new. I want to be the new kid on the block to do the newest technique. So now we're going to see what this looks like live. A lot of times when guys use cars for different types of exercises on the flat range, they let the drill turn into speed gun exercises or more similar to USPSA matches. So we want to make sure that we're using this vehicle with regards to what we know about it with ballistic protection, so engine blocks, wheel assemblies. And if there's other portions of this vehicle that don't provide that great of a ballistic protection, we want to make sure that we're using it for some kind of concealment to minimize our silhouette. So what tends to happen is we'll see guys improperly shoot drills like this where they just kind of run around for no reason and they're not actually manipulating the vehicle as protection as they would in the real world. When I go to shoot this exercise, I'm going to have an immediate threat that I'm going to engage from inside the vehicle, and I'm going to go ahead and dismount and exit the vehicle to engage the rest of the threats. Now, when I go to take my second shots, they're going to be from right here within the V between this door and the frame of the vehicle. This is a hasty security position. Rarely do I ever want to be completely standing up where I'm maximizing my silhouette, maximizing my profile, and giving the enemy a big target to work with. If I need to do immediate work as soon as I clear my gun from inside the vehicle to where I have a greater range of motion, a greater field of view, and I'm not shooting through glass, so I'll have improved performance with my rounds. If I need to take that shot, I'm going to take it very quickly and then anchor myself to a better piece of ballistic protection based off of what's happening in the situation. For this particular situation, I've got targets out here to the front, and I've got a target out to the rear of this vehicle over here. So naturally, my path of movement is going to be towards this rear wheel assembly. Now, I don't want to be standing up the whole time. I want to go ahead and drop my silhouette so that I give the enemy less data points to work with. The other thing I want to consider too is, I know it's daylight, but let's think about shooting at night. If I'm shooting at night and I'm white lighting from right here and I'm white lighting from right here, these are the data points and the level of elevation that the enemy has to work with. If I don't drop my silhouette and try to maximize the minimal amount of ballistic protection afforded, I'm gonna have myself in a poor situation where the enemy can just kind of shoot at suspected locations and they might tag me because I didn't think about getting a little bit lower, getting a little bit tighter on these better pieces of cover on the vehicle. All right, let's go hot. All right, shooters ready, stand by. Contact right! All right, so it's important to always remember that when we do exercises like this with vehicles where we're trying to model them after the real world, that we understand what we need to be doing with our mindset. So security, mobility, minimizing our silhouette. We're not just running around for no reason. We're very aware of how to manipulate this piece of terrain with regards to what actually happens in the real world. Take into consideration what we saw with the ballistic lab, so where the better pieces of ballistic protection are. And just being really smart with this muzzle, you know, being smart with getting into and out of the vehicle, and just knowing where it's pointed, and if we have to aggressively manipulate it around a family member, around a teammate, around someone that doesn't need to be shot, we're being very proactive with that.